Africa is considered the most vulnerable continent to climate change.
Climate change is defined as a significant and a lasting change in statistical weather-related parameters that take decades or millions of years.
The fact that we are sustaining more extreme events in the region and we are sustaining a higher frequency of drought events is again impacting negatively on livelihoods.
Really, it is the human fingerprints which are causing the climate change.
Population in Eastern Africa affected by the 2011 drought and humanitarian crisis. Kenya 4.3,519,764. Ethiopia 4.8,177,201. Somalia 4 million. However, there is increasing realization that coping with the already devastating impacts of climate change require increased understanding of the science behind natural and man-made causes, even if the continent has contributed minimally to the climate change.
Human is degrading the environment, the natural resources that God gave us to survive on, and told us use it and leave it better than you found it. Sustainability of the environment resources. I think this is where it is. We are actually damaging the atmosphere, they damage the water, we are damaging the ecosystem, almost everything.
The sun's energy, which is abundant in the Horn of Africa, is at the center of climate change and is linked to global warming or greenhouse effect, ocean currents, and temperature changes. Indeed, Central and Eastern Africa, especially the Horn of Africa, remain the global hotspot of climate change. The region's 2011 humanitarian crisis was linked to severe drought that threatened the lives of over 14 million people, mostly in Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. However, despite minimum publicity, scientists, researchers, policymakers, NGOs, various experts and other key stakeholders in the region are focusing on various innovative solutions needed to cope with devastating impacts of climate change on a sustainable basis. The devastating impact of climate change is being felt in the 10 Eastern and Central African countries that include Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Rwanda, Burundi, and Sudan. However, as a regional organization, IGAD has to deal with various aspects of climate change, including drought, desertification, and unlimited environmental issues. It is increasingly becoming clear that the solution to the increasingly devastating drought in the Horn of Africa lies in understanding or having scientific knowledge of the region's climate. Professor Laban Ogalo, the Executive Director of IGAD Climate Change Prediction and Application Center, ICPAC, says that climate change is a critical issue.
Our model are showing whether you damage the atmosphere, whether you damage the land surface, whether you damage the water, you actually, in the end of the day, you actually can prove that you are going to change the climate of a given area, climate of a given region, climate of a given world. And the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has approved, like they won the Nobel Award of 2007, that human fingerprints are there on the current climate problems.
IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, ICPAC, has turned what used to be seen as a highly unreliable science of daily, weekly, monthly, and seasonal weather forecasting into a science with increasingly accurate information and data that can be used to initiate activities designed to help counties and local communities cope with prolonged drought and floods in the 10 Eastern and Central African countries. However, experts at the Climate Prediction and Application Center, ICPAC, have not ignored indigenous knowledge based on centuries of experience. They are working with targeted local communities such as the Nganyi community in Western Kenya, who also have their own indigenous knowledge of predicting climate change.
There are several efforts that are ongoing to combat climate change in the region, at local level, national, regional, and international. If I focus more on the local level, and national and regional level now, Horn of Africa, they can be categorized into three. The first one is natural resource based, where we have hard mobility, we have hard diversification, we have the local people devising mechanisms of adapting to climate change impacts on their own. These efforts have contributed significantly to the growing knowledge on climate change and the efforts towards minimizing the impacts of climate change. But I can say that there's still more to be done, especially on issues of research, knowledge management, and also upscaling of best practices. In doing so, also it will help the various institutions, individuals, or the various platforms that exist on trying to combat climate change to work in a more coherent and consolidated manner.
However, like many other parts of the planet Earth, drought and floods in the Horn of Africa are linked to two powerful natural events or phenomenon. The El Niño, which is the warming of water in the Pacific Ocean, and La Niña, which is the cooling of water in the Pacific Ocean.
Must do something to save the Earth, because the floods in some area are going to be more gigantic, they are going to be more frequent. The heat waves are going to be more frequent, more gigantic, or more longer than they used to. The droughts are going to be more frequent or shift into area which, you know, and these are proposal or ideas which were given the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate, who were including local and regional scientists.
The Horn of Africa region has gone through the most severe drought in 60 years, causing widespread loss of livestock and crops. African experts are rapidly moving towards finding sustainable solutions needed to cope with the devastating socio-economic impacts of climate change extremes. One of Africa's leading experts in the application of vulnerability science for understanding climate change impacts on crop livestock systems and rural livelihoods, Dr. James Kinyagi, based at the International Livestock Research Institute in Nairobi, Kenya, says,
we're also experiencing a higher incidence or a higher frequency of drought events. So whereas, for instance, 20, 30 years ago, that you would record a severe drought event in every 7 to 10 years, we are now seeing more and more that these severe drought events are coming in shorter periods of time, perhaps between 3 to 5 years. So I think the fact that we are sustaining more extreme events in the region, and we are sustaining a higher frequency of drought events, is again impacting negatively on livelihoods.
However, there is still need for urgent action or relevant homegrown solutions that help in mitigating of devastating impacts of climate change in the Horn of Africa on a sustainable basis.
It is important that regional integration, especially in the Horn of Africa, be taken seriously. And if I can give an example of ECOWAS in West Africa, they have come up with a way of allowing free movement of pastoralists within the region. They have come up with the transhuman certificate and also pastoralist passport. And these pastoralist passports allow the pastoralists to move from all over the West African countries. And this is a way that they can also maximize the resources that are available for the livestock and even for themselves. So I believe that even the Horn of Africa can learn from other sub-regions.
Reducing vulnerability and building resilience involves rainwater harvesting, small-scale irrigation, herd management, tree planting and agroforestry, drought-tolerant breeds, animal breeding, improved fodder species, high-yielding and drought-tolerant crop varieties. All these lead to livelihood diversification.
The Horn of Africa is unique in the sense that there is a lot of variability in livelihood activities, and so you have highland agriculture in the higher potential areas that receive more rainfall and are cooler. And you have pastoral types of livelihoods centered around livestock, particularly cattle, camels, sheep and goats in the much more marginal areas. And this presents actually a different vulnerability context for the region.
Transformative actions extend to research, knowledge management and sharing, upscaling and strengthening best practices on ongoing adaptation actions and initiatives. Countries in the region are moving towards a common ground in terms of collective responsibility, including mobilization of international community together with its technical and financial resources to mitigation.
A number of partners are working to build the resilience of local communities in terms of the way they respond to climate variability and climate change. I would like to highlight that, for example, the CGIAR program on climate change, agriculture and food security is actually working with farmers, is working with policymakers, is working with administrators, is working with NGOs in a whole new way of making sure that we are able to bring the knowledge and the experience about improved varieties, about drought-tolerant varieties of crops, about more resilient breeds of animals, and to share with this wider community in terms of allowing this knowledge to diffuse in the communities and in terms of allowing farmers and decision makers to make choices.
The Great Horn of Africa needs to invest in early warning systems able to provide advanced information where likely impact will occur and how severe it will be. One example is a food security early warning system providing regular updates. Still, what are some of the ongoing practical solutions? What are the success cases and challenges that need highlighting?
There are a number of other partners, for example, the Intergovernmental Authority on Drought and Development in the Horn of Africa has been working for many years through the Climate Outlook Forums to make sure that they provide that seasonal forecasting information that is necessary for farmers to make decisions. And more also at the national level, policymakers are beginning to use this information through provision of better extension services, through making sure that they can be able to target the availability of fertilizers and availability of seeds in ways in which they allow the farming community to take advantage of the variable seasons.
Already, new initiatives supported by the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, CGIAR, Research Program on Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security, CCAFS, is helping pastoralists and smallholder farmers cope with the emerging impacts of climate change, especially the severe drought. Their efforts to assess vulnerability to climate change by mapping impacts and adaptation in Eastern Africa, including analysis of soil fertility, water and nutrient management for both crops and livestock in agroecological systems.
Going forward, we really need policy frameworks that can allow us to scale up these actions.
You know, climate is affecting almost every socio-economic sector. The international and local scientific community are telling us that the climate tomorrow is not going to be the same as climate of today.
According to IPCC, the global mean surface temperature has been increasing in the past 100 years, but has become more rapid in the last 25 years, and the warmest decade was between 2001 to 2010.